500 million people are about to lose access to security updates for the operating system running on their computer right now. The day Windows 10 reaches what the company calls end of support. But what does that actually mean for your device? What happens the day after? And why are governments, schools, and businesses around the world scrambling to figure out what to do? Security researchers have been warning about what comes next. Governments have launched investigations. And the environmental cost of what Microsoft is asking users to do has sparked unprecedented organized resistance. Keep watching to know what makes this different from every other software retirement you've seen before. Find out what Microsoft knew, when they knew it, and what they're not telling you. Let's start with what Microsoft wants you to believe. Windows 10 launched in July 2015 as what Microsoft called the last version of Windows you'll ever need. The company promised continuous updates, free upgrades, and a decade of support. And for nearly 10 years, that's exactly what hundreds of millions of users got. Security patches every month, feature updates twice a year, a stable, familiar interface that worked across billions of devices worldwide. But in June 2021, Microsoft announced Windows 11. Suddenly, that promise of Windows 10 being the final version evaporated. The company declared that Windows 10 would reach end of support on October 14, 2025. After that date, no more security updates, no more bug fixes, no more protection against newly discovered vulnerabilities. Microsoft's explanation was straightforward. Technology moves forward. Windows 11 offers better security through features like TPM 2.0, Secure Boot, and virtualization-based protection. These hardware requirements ensure a safer computing experience. Windows 10 is simply too old to provide the level of security modern users need. The company made the migration path sound simple. Check if your PC meets Windows 11's requirements. If it does, upgrade for free. If it doesn't, buy a new computer. Microsoft even created a PC health check tool to tell you whether your device qualifies. They partnered with manufacturers to promote Windows 11 ready machines. The message was clear: this is progress. And progress requires modern hardware. On the surface, it sounds reasonable. Every software product eventually reaches retirement. Apple does it with macOS. Google does it with Android. This is just the natural life cycle of technology, right? That's the official narrative. But when security researchers and independent analysts started looking at the actual requirements, the hardware compatibility data, and the timeline Microsoft chose, they discovered something that completely contradicts that story. In September 2021, just months after the Windows 11 announcement, hardware analysis firm Canalys published a report that should have been front-page news. They estimated that over 240 million PCs worldwide would be incompatible with Windows 11 due to Microsoft's hardware requirements. Not because they were slow, not because they couldn't run the software, but because they lacked a single chip, the Trusted Platform Module 2.0. Robert Litton, a security researcher at Longbow Security, decided to test Microsoft's claim that TPM 2.0 was essential for security. He installed Windows 11 on devices without TPM using widely available workarounds that Microsoft itself documented. Then he ran the same security benchmarks Microsoft uses to test Windows 11's protection features. His finding was that the security difference was statistically negligible for everyday users. The features that actually protect against malware, ransomware, and phishing attacks work identically whether TPM 2.0 is present or not. So, if the security justification doesn't hold up, what's the real reason for the cutoff? The UK's Information's Commissioner's Office started asking the same question. In their preliminary investigation, they examined the pattern of excluded devices. Computers from 2017, 2018, even early 2019, machines that are objectively powerful enough to run Windows 11 were being rejected because their processors fell one generation short of Microsoft's arbitrary list. A computer with an Intel 7th generation processor, incompatible. The same computer with an 8th generation processor that performs almost identically, fully supported. Environmental researchers at the Public Interest Research Group analyzed what would happen if even half of the incompatible devices were replaced. Their projection, 240 million computers generating approximately 480 million kilograms of electronic waste. Circuit boards containing rare earth metals, plastic casings that take centuries to decompose, batteries with toxic chemicals, all going to landfills because of a security feature that independent testing showed was largely superficial. In March 2024, a leaked internal Microsoft document obtained by The Verge revealed something the company had never publicly disclosed. The decision to enforce strict hardware requirements for Windows 11 wasn't driven by security engineering teams. It was driven by the Windows and Devices Sales Division, the same division responsible for revenue from OEM partnerships with Dell, HP, Lenovo, and every other PC manufacturer. The document showed clear language the Windows 11 hardware requirements would create a multi-year upgrade cycle and accelerate device refresh rates across enterprise and consumer segments. In plain terms, Microsoft knew the requirements would force hundreds of millions of people to buy new computers, and they designed the policy specifically to make that happen. You probably think Microsoft at least offered some kind of extended support option for people who couldn't upgrade. They did. But when you look at the details, you'll see why that's not the safety net it appears to be. By late 2023, governments around the world started to take notice. Germany's Federal Office for Information Security published a formal advisory warning that the Windows 10 end of support deadline posed a significant risk to critical infrastructure, small businesses, and educational institutions. The UK's ICO opened an investigation into whether Microsoft's support policy violated GDPR principles around data minimization and security. In South Korea, the Korea Communications Commission launched a separate inquiry examining whether the hardware requirements constituted an abuse of market dominance. The European Environmental Bureau, representing over 180 environmental organizations, filed a complaint with the European Commission. These weren't fringe activists or conspiracy theorists. These were official government bodies and established institutions pointing to the same conclusion. Microsoft's justification didn't match the evidence. But while regulators asked questions, millions of real people were left trying to figure out what this actually meant for their daily lives. And that's where the human cost becomes impossible to ignore. Let's talk about who's affected when a company decides your 3-year-old computer is obsolete. Imagine a small medical clinic in rural Montana. They run electronic health records on 15 Windows 10 machines purchased in 2019. Those computers work perfectly. They're fast enough, reliable enough, and they handle patient data securely under current HIPAA requirements. But they don't have TPM 2.0. After October 2025, every one of those machines becomes a compliance risk. Under HIPAA, medical providers must use technology with up-to-date security protections. An unpatched operating system with known vulnerabilities doesn't meet that standard. So this clinic faces a choice: spend $30,000 replacing machines that work fine, or risk federal penalties and potential data breaches that could expose patient information. Now consider a nonprofit organization serving domestic violence survivors. They provide emergency housing, legal assistance, and counseling. Their case management system runs on donated computers, most from 2017 and 2018. These machines contain intake forms, safety plans, and confidential addresses for people hiding from abusers. When Windows 10 loses support, those machines become targets. Malware that exploits unpatched vulnerabilities could exfiltrate that data. And unlike a corporation with an IT budget, this nonprofit runs on grants that barely cover rent and staff salaries. They can't just buy new computers. So they're left with an impossible choice: continue using unsecure systems that put vulnerable people at risk, or shut down digital record keeping entirely. These aren't edge cases. According to market research firm IDC, approximately 42% of Windows users worldwide are running devices that can't upgrade to Windows 11. When researchers examined the excluded processors, they found that many of them outperform the minimum spec processors that are approved for Windows 11. A 7th-generation Intel Core i7 gets rejected. An 8th-generation Intel Core i3 gets approved, even though the i7 is objectively more powerful. The cutoff isn't about performance, it's about forcing a specific generation of hardware purchases. After the backlash intensified, Microsoft did offer a compromise. In June 2024, they announced the Extended Security Update Program for Windows 10. For the first time ever, they would sell continued security updates to consumers, not just businesses. The cost? $30 for the first year. Double that for year 2, triple for year 3. If you want to keep your perfectly functional computer secure for 3 more years, you'll pay $180. For context, that's often more than the residual value of the device itself. And even if you pay, there's a catch. The ESU program only provides critical security patches, no feature updates, no quality improvements, no bug fixes for non-security issues. You're paying for the bare minimum to keep your computer from being actively dangerous. But here's what Microsoft didn't advertise. Security researcher Kevin Beaumont discovered that even with ESU patches applied, Windows 10 systems will start displaying full-screen warnings about being unsupported. The warnings appear every few days. They're designed to be intrusive, to make you feel like you're doing something wrong by not upgrading. It's not enough that you paid for continued security. Microsoft still wants you to feel bad about it. And those TPM 2.0 requirements Microsoft claimed were essential for security? In October 2024, the company quietly published official instructions for installing Windows 11 on unsupported hardware. They even built a registry edit into the installer specifically to bypass TPM checks. The workaround is documented on Microsoft's own support site. Let that sink in. Microsoft spent 3 years telling you that TPM 2.0 was a non-negotiable security requirement. They used that justification to declare hundreds of millions of computers obsolete. Then they published step-by-step instructions for bypassing their own requirement. If the security feature was truly essential, why would Microsoft show users how to disable it? The answer is obvious. The requirement was never about your security. It was about market control. Even the encryption that TPM enables isn't as critical as Microsoft suggested. Independent security analysts at Trail of Bits conducted tests showing that software-based encryption on Windows 10 provides functionally equivalent protection for the vast majority of consumer use cases. Full disk encryption with BitLocker works with or without TPM. The difference in real-world attack resistance is minimal. So you're left with a system that's secure enough for Microsoft to officially support bypassing their own requirements, but not secure enough for them to continue patching without charging you for the privilege. Your entire computing security is being held hostage by a policy that Microsoft's own documentation proves is arbitrary. If you're running Windows 10 on a device that can't upgrade, you have options. They're not all perfect, but they're better than what Microsoft is offering. First, check if your computer actually can run Windows 11 even if the PC Health Check tool says no. Go to Settings, then System, then About. Look at your processor model. If you have an Intel 7th generation or AMD Ryzen 1000 series or newer, your computer is physically capable of running Windows 11 regardless of what Microsoft tells you. Search for Install Windows 11 without TPM on Microsoft's own support site. They provide the official workaround. You'll be running an unsupported configuration, but you'll get security updates. And for most users, the risk difference is negligible. Second, if you want to stay on Windows 10, but avoid the ESU costs, use this time to minimize your attack surface. Go to Settings, then Privacy, and disable everything under Diagnostics and Feedback. Turn off activity history, location tracking, and add personalization. Then go to Windows Update, click Advanced Options, and disable feature updates. You want security updates only. Every feature you disable is one less potential vulnerability. Third, consider switching to Linux. If you primarily use your computer for web browsing, email, and document editing, Linux Mint or Ubuntu provide a familiar interface with continued security support on any hardware from the last 15 years. The learning curve is smaller than you think, and you'll never deal with forced obsolescence again. Fourth, if you're staying on Windows 10 past the deadline without ESU, use a layered security approach. Install a reputable third-party antivirus that provides real-time protection. Use a browser with automatic updates like Chrome or Firefox. Enable Microsoft Defender even after official support ends. It will continue to receive threat definitions for some time. And critically, create regular backups to an external drive that you disconnect when not in use. Finally, if you decide you need to buy a new computer, do not reward this behavior. Buy refurbished or used Windows 11 compatible machines instead of new ones. Let Microsoft and the manufacturers see that forced obsolescence doesn't automatically translate to new hardware sales. The point is this: you are not helpless. Microsoft wants you to feel like you have no choice, but you do. 500 million computers didn't suddenly become insecure on their own. Microsoft made a business decision and called it a security requirement. The difference between being a victim of this policy and being prepared is information. You now have information most Windows 10 users don't have. What you do with it determines whether you're in control or whether Microsoft is. I want to know, are you staying on Windows 10 with workarounds, making the jump to 11, or switching to something else entirely? Comment your plan below. The collective knowledge in this comment section will be worth more than anything Microsoft publishes on their support site.